Learning to live is not just a skill, it is an art. But getting old is a real skill. As an old friend of mine, a monk from a remote monastery in the mountains of Tibet, used to say, "This wisdom has burrowed deeper into my heart over time. When you're over 60, life is no longer about the running around that accompanied you in your youth. Now, it's not just how you live your life that matters, but who you live it with." Let me ask you a question. Have you ever wondered why, after a certain age, our relationships with people can become a heavy burden? Someone lives with family, husband, children, maybe even grandchildren. Someone else might live with friends or alone. It seems like it should be simple, but in reality, it feels different. Life, like the house we build around us, depends on who we let into our personal space. And so, if you're over 60, there are certain types of people you definitely shouldn't share shelter with. They drain your energy, impair your health, and worse, make you hostile to their problems and fears. But before we delve into this fascinating topic, if my words resonate, subscribe and leave a 6-word comment. It takes just a second, but will help the channel grow. Now, let's talk about one of the most dangerous types of people to seniors, the constant complainer. Do you know anyone like this? These are the ones who find problems in everything. The weather is wrong, the pension is small, the kids are misbehaving, and so on. You just woke up in the morning, and they're ready to pour their whining on you from head to toe. People like that are dangerous to live with. Complaining is like a virus that spreads and takes over your mind. Over time, you begin to see the world through their distorted perception. Everything is bad. Everyone is to blame. Life is not good. But that's not true, is it? There are so many opportunities that are open to us, even after 60. If you want to keep a clear mind and joy in your soul, stay away from those who see the world in only grey shades. Think about it. How often do you hear complaints from those around you? And most importantly, how do you feel after communicating with them? Perhaps it's time to put things in order, not only in your house, but also in your circle of communication. Well, we continue. If everything is clear with the complainers, then let's talk about another category of people with whom the elderly categorically cannot live, the so-called energy vampires. Who are they? Well, they're not the ones who drink your blood, of course, although honestly, sometimes it feels like that's exactly what they do. They suck your energy, your vitality, and most importantly, they do it so sneakily that you don't even notice. Here's an example. Your neighbor comes to you, all smiles, seemingly nice, bringing you pies and asking how you are doing. And then it starts. "Oh, I have everything bad. Oh, and you don't have this. How do you live? How are you even coping with this old age?" After an hour of such conversations, you feel completely devastated. You didn't fight or complain openly, but you feel like you've been ripped off. You know, I had a case like that. A friend of mine, let's call her Maria, lived with her daughter. She was a good girl, but as soon as she had a problem, she ran to her mum, and everything would have been fine. But this girl's problems seemed to permeate the whole house. She would come and tell her how her boyfriend had hurt her, how her boss at work wouldn't give her peace. Maria listened and tried to help, but after a couple of years of such coexistence, she didn't know where her own life ended and where the problems of her daughter began. What's my point? Don't live with those who make you constantly solve their problems. You have your own life, your own worries, and most importantly, your own health. After 60, every extra worry can be costly. And there's no shame in saying, "Honey, I need to be alone for a while," or "Let you solve this problem on your own." Buddhists say that each person carries their own karma, and if you constantly interfere in other people's affairs, you don't let them learn from their mistakes. Worse, you take on someone else's karma, someone else's problems and negativity. Don't do that. Life is too short to carry someone else's problems. And now, a question for you. Are there such people in your environment who pull energy out of you without even asking? If so, maybe it's time to distance yourself a little. After all, ultimately each of us is responsible for our own happiness. Well, I'm glad you're still here. That means my words are resonating. Let's keep talking. We've already discussed complainers and energy vampires, but there's another type of person the elderly should stay away from, the controllers. Oh, I'm sure you know the ones. These are the people who constantly feel it's their duty to tell you how to live your life the right way. Here's an example. You're in your 60s. You know exactly what you want out of life. You've worked hard, raised your children, and gone through ups and downs. And suddenly, someone, whether it's a relative or an old friend, starts dictating how you should live. Oh, you shouldn't go out so much. You're already of age. Why do you need a new hobby? You're not young anymore. You shouldn't date men. What are you thinking? I'll tell you frankly, such people should be bypassed if they can't accept that your life is your life. You see, the thing is, we're all responsible for ourselves. No one has the right to decide for you how to live your life, especially when you're at an age where you've earned the freedom to do what you want. Buddhism teaches us not to get attached to the expectations of others. They say, let go of attachment to approval, and you will find true freedom. But here's the interesting thing. It's not always others trying to control us consciously. Often, it's because of their own fears. The fear that they themselves will someday find themselves in your situation, retired, alone, without a concrete plan for life. I had an acquaintance who was controlled by her son. She wanted to go on a trip with her friends, but he would tell her, "Mum, it's not safe. You might fall, get sick, and what am I going to do?" So, she stayed at home. She didn't travel because of his fears, even though she could have enjoyed life, visiting new places and making new friends. My dear ones, remember, your life is your work of art, and no one has the right to be your censor. You decide who you want to live with, where you want to go, and what you want to do. Let everyone live their own life, and don't let anyone prevent you from living yours. Think about it. Are there people in your environment who are trying to control or limit you? What are they causing you to miss out on? Maybe it's time to put them in their place, respectfully but firmly, so that you don't let them interfere in your affairs anymore. Let's move on to another challenging relationship dynamic, living with grown children. Ah, grown children. What would we do without them? I know many of you are smiling right now, because everyone over 60 probably has at least one adult child who feels like they can't break the umbilical cord with mom or dad. But let's be honest, sometimes living with adult children after 60 isn't just hard, it can be devastating. Let's break it down. Have you ever wondered why some children, long grown, continue to act like they're still dependent on their parents? You probably have your own examples. You raised them all their lives to become independent, to learn from their mistakes, to build their own lives. But somewhere along the way, something went wrong. As adults, they return home, or worse, they never leave home. And then it starts. Mom, cook me something to eat. Dad, help me with money. I need your help. How can you leave me? These adult children often become an anchor. It's as if they are holding you in place, preventing you from moving on, developing, and enjoying life. And the worst part? They do it under the guise of love. They convince you that you just have to help them. After all, you're their parent. How could you say no? But here's the truth that no one tells you. By helping such adult children all the time, you not only deprive them of the opportunity to become independent, but you also deprive yourself of the right to happiness. In Buddhism, there is a concept called role attachment. This is when we become so immersed in a role, whether it's the role of a mother, father, wife, or husband, that we forget about ourselves as individuals. You're not only a mum or a dad, you're also a person who has a right to your own life, your own interests, your own pleasures. I'm reminded of the story of a woman. Let's call her Natalia. She was in her 60s and spent her life helping her son, who by the age of 40 had not been able to find a stable job. He lived with her, didn't pay rent, didn't help with chores, and constantly demanded money. "Well, how can I kick him out?" she complained to me. "He's my son, after all." And then one day, Natalia got seriously ill. She had to go to another city for treatment, and her son didn't even offer to help her. He didn't take care of the house, didn't support her in any way. He went on with his life, as if nothing had happened. That's when Natalia realized the painful truth. Her own health and life had been sacrificed for his convenience. That was her breaking point. She finally understood that by continuing to help him in this way, she was simply destroying both herself and him. So now I ask you, do you have such adult children who live at your expense, use you, and prevent you from living your own life? Maybe it's time to have an honest conversation with them and set boundaries. After all, at the end of the day, you don't have to be their eternal support. Ah, lovers. Now that's an interesting topic, isn't it? I know some of you are waiting for me to touch on this delicate subject. Who says intimacy has to end after 60? I'll tell you, nobody. But here's the rub. Living with lovers, especially as we age, can be just as dangerous a gamble as when we were young, if not worse. As we age, we become wiser, but that doesn't mean passions subside. Sometimes they even intensify. The desire for intimacy increases, and we look for someone with whom we can share not only emotional warmth, but also something hotter. Yes, don't pretend. I know that many of you still have a fire in your soul, but is that fire worth bringing into the house? Let's get to the bottom of this. Who do older people usually get involved with? Most often, it's someone from old acquaintances, friends, or, what happens more often than we might admit, someone who is younger. And that's where the complications start. As you age, you realize that relationships require respect, patience, and freedom. But not all lovers, especially those younger than you, understand this. I had a friend, let's call her Galina. She fell in love with a man 20 years younger than her. He was not only handsome, but also energetic, which strongly attracted her. They started living together, and at first, everything was wonderful. She felt young again, happy, and even began to lead an active lifestyle as in her younger years. But as time went on, things changed. This man began to demand more and more of her, more attention, more energy, more resources. He became another child in her life. He needed her to take care of him, cook for him, and even help him financially. What started as a relationship of passion turned into a burden. She burned out. The passion faded, and all that remained were complaints and irritation. Galina realized that this relationship was not only draining her physically, but also robbing her of her emotional freedom. Here's the lesson. Living with lovers after 60 is not about passion alone. It's about balance and respect. And if that's not there, it's better to live separately and enjoy a long-distance relationship rather than destroy your peace. But let's not limit ourselves to stories with younger lovers. Even if your partner is the same age or older, harmony is not guaranteed. Older people often start living together out of fear of loneliness. But the truth is, fear is a terrible foundation for any relationship, especially one that begins in adulthood. So think about it. Why are you seeking a lover or companion? Is it a genuine desire to share your life with someone, or is it fear of being alone? And if you're already in a relationship, ask yourself, do you feel respect and freedom, or is the relationship weighing you down? Now, let's shift our focus to a category of people you absolutely should not live with after 60. Those who don't recognize your boundaries and don't value your time. Every one of us has encountered someone who thinks your time is theirs to use as they please. These people always seem to have a reason to ask for your help. You're retired now, why not help out? You have free time, you can take care of this for me. Sound familiar? For them, your time is like an endless supply they can dip into at will. And the worst part? They believe you must say yes. But here's the truth. After 60, your time becomes more valuable than ever. It's your most precious resource. You've worked hard all your life, raised your children, taken care of your family, and now it's your turn to live for yourself. But how do you do that when others constantly burden you with their problems and demands? This is where it's crucial to learn to assert your right to privacy. Buddhists teach that peace and inner harmony come when we clearly understand and protect our boundaries. Those who don't respect your boundaries are people you should keep at a distance, even if they seem close. Everyone is entitled to rest and personal time. You don't have to be available to others at all times. You've probably noticed that after interacting with such people, you feel drained, as if you've spent the entire day on something unimportant with no time left for yourself. Things could be different if you simply learned to say no. Yes, it's hard, especially when it comes to loved ones who are used to your help. But sometimes, the best thing you can do is protect your time and energy. Think about it. How often in your life do you feel like you're spending your time on things that aren't truly important to you? Are you ready to start standing up for your right to peace and freedom, even if it means saying no to those who take advantage of you? Now, let's talk about another group of people you should avoid: the pessimists. You know the ones. These are the people who constantly remind you of your age as if it's a limitation. They love to say things like, "At your age, it's time to slow down." Why do you need to do that? You're not young anymore. They may seem like they care, but in reality, they are undermining your confidence. Let me be blunt. Age is not a judgment. Being over 60 doesn't mean you should stop enjoying life, doing what you love, or exploring new opportunities. But pessimists will try to convince you otherwise. They'll remind you of every little ache and pain, as if to say, "Why bother? Just sit back and wait." Here's the thing. Their fears and limitations are not yours. I've met people in their 70s and 80s who are still living life to the fullest. They feel much younger than those who constantly complain about age. Why? Because it's not about numbers. It's about your mindset. If you surround yourself with people who share your positive outlook, you'll start to feel differently. The world around you changes. You see that even after 60, you can enjoy every day, discover new things, and stay active. People who focus on their fears of aging are projecting them onto you. They want to hold you hostage to their beliefs. But your body and mind are your responsibility. You decide how to live your years. Think about it. Are there people in your environment who constantly tell you that you're too old to do something? And most importantly, are you ready to free yourself from their influence and live the way you want to live? Continuing our conversation, let's touch on another crucial topic: those who limit your potential and don't believe in your abilities. How often have you heard phrases like, "You're too old to start something new"? "At your age, it's better not to take risks." These opinions are often imposed not only by outsiders, but surprisingly, by family and friends. This brings us to another category of people you should avoid living with: those who discourage your growth. You might think, "Come on, I'm in my 60s. What new opportunities are there?" But let me remind you, many great discoveries, new endeavors, and hobbies were started by people at an advanced age. Age is not a barrier, unless you allow it to become one. Unfortunately, some people around you will do everything they can to convince you otherwise. They'll say, "Why do you need to learn new things? You're not building a career anymore. Forget about the gym. Why would you care about that now?" Sound familiar? These people act out of their own fears. They don't even realize they're holding you back. They think they're protecting you from unnecessary hardship, but in reality, they're limiting you. Here's a truth you need to hear. After 60, a new life begins. It can be bright, rich, and full of possibilities, but only if you give yourself permission to live it. Buddhism teaches us not to cling to the past or fear the future. Joy is found in the present moment. And that joy is impossible to experience if you're constantly thinking about what you can't do because of your age. I've met people who, after retirement, discovered talents they never knew they had. Some started painting, others learned new sports, and some even launched their own businesses. These individuals inspire not only themselves, but also those around them. They prove that life after 60 doesn't end. It transitions into a new phase. So, don't let anyone, whether a relative, friend, or neighbor, tell you that your opportunities are limited by age. They aren't. Your opportunities are limited only by what you're willing to believe. Now let me ask you, who in your environment discourages you from trying new things or reaching for new goals? And more importantly, are you ready to ignore their doubts and pursue what you've been putting off for years? Now, here's a truth that may shock you. After 60, you owe no one anything. Yes, you heard me right. This applies to your friends, relatives, and even your closest loved ones. It's time to recognize that no one has the right to demand you live according to their expectations. Here's a question for you. Why is it so common in our society to expect older people to put everyone else's interests above their own? You've already done so much. You raised your children, supported your family, and helped your friends. But now, when it's time to live for yourself, there will always be those who try to convince you that it's selfish. What do you mean you won't help with the grandchildren? How can you go on vacation when we have problems here? The hard truth is, many people see you as a resource. They believe that since you have time, you must spend it on them. And here's where it gets interesting. When you say no, they start to pressure you. How could you? What right do you have to think about yourself? But let me ask you, since when has your life ceased to be yours? Since when are you obligated to sacrifice your personal time for someone else's comfort? Buddhism teaches an important lesson. You cannot help others if you destroy yourself in the process. How often do you destroy yourself by giving in to guilt or duty? And here's another hard truth. If you don't start living for yourself now, when will you? Life after 60 can be fulfilling and adventurous, but only if you give yourself permission to live it. Think about it. How many times in recent years have you put your desires on hold to fulfill someone else's requests? How many times have you said, I deserve a break, but maybe later? The truth is, later may never come. If you don't start valuing your time, someone else will take it, and you'll be left wondering where your life went. Now ask yourself, how often have you lived for others instead of yourself? And more importantly, are you ready to take the bold step of finally living for yourself? Let's bring this to a powerful conclusion by diving deeper into the choices we face after 60. To keep living for others' expectations, or to finally take control of our lives. This choice is uncomfortable for many people around you because it challenges the status quo. But for you, it's the key to freedom. Here's what you need to realize. No one is going to come along and give you permission to live for yourself. In fact, there will always be people trying to convince you that you are obligated to sacrifice your happiness for theirs. They'll say, at your age, you should focus on family, not yourself. Why are you thinking about traveling or hobbies? You're needed here. But here's the truth. This is your time. You've earned it. Buddhism teaches us that each of us is responsible for our own happiness. And that's the beauty of it. You are the one who gets to decide how to live your life. Do you want to travel? Do it. Do you want to start a new hobby? Start it. Do you want to fall in love again? Go ahead. The world is still open to you, even after 60. And if someone tries to stop you, remember, that's their problem, not yours. People will always project their fears onto you. They'll tell you why they think something isn't possible, why it's too risky, or why it's impractical. But their fears are not your reality. Let me share another story. There was a man I knew, we'll call him Victor. He had always dreamed of painting, but life got in the way. a career, raising kids, financial responsibilities. By the time he retired, he was 65, and everyone around him told him, "What's the point of starting now?" But Victor didn't listen. He picked up a brush and started painting. Within 5 years, his work was displayed in a local gallery, and he found a whole new community of friends who shared his passion. His joy was palpable, and he often said, "These have been the happiest years of my life." What's stopping you from being like Victor? What have you always wanted to do, but kept putting off because of other people's expectations? Now let's talk about the ultimate realization. Age is not the end, it's a new beginning. After 60, you have wisdom and experience that you didn't have in your younger years. This is a time to reflect on what truly matters to you and pursue it without hesitation. Let me leave you with a final question. Are you ready to recognize that your life belongs to you alone? That no one, absolutely no one, has the right to dictate how you live it? Or will you keep living according to others' expectations, denying yourself the freedom you've earned? Be honest with yourself. The answers to these questions can redefine your future. My dear friends, if this conversation has resonated with you, I encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments. Let me know how you feel, what changes you're ready to make, or even just your reflections on what we've discussed. And of course, don't forget to subscribe if my words have touched your heart. This is just the beginning of our journey toward freedom, peace, and a life truly lived on your own terms. Thank you for being here. Until next time, take care of yourselves and your happiness.